Oh my God. Don't tell me it's exactly what I think. That whisper echoed in Skylar Monroe's mind as she stood in the icy hallway of St. Augustine Medical Center, her hand gripping the railing tightly to steady herself. The night rain still clung to her hair. Her breath trembled slightly as she gazed at the half-open delivery room door. Inside, someone's voice called out Ethan's name, her husband's name, with a desperate, intimate familiarity that made her heart skip a beat. A strange sensation welled up, sharp yet calm, like a harbinger that the world she knew was about to veer onto an irreversible path. And the question was, had she stepped into the right fateful night? The Seattle night rain still clung to Skylar Monroe's coat as she stepped into St. Augustine Medical Center. Her wet shoes left long streaks of water on the white tile floor. The hospital air carried a sterile, chilly scent of disinfectant, mingling with the faint murmurs of the night shift. Her belly swelled with each breath. A dull ache ran along her hip, but she pressed on, as if an invisible force was pulling her toward a truth she both dreaded and was compelled to confront. And before continuing with the main content of the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, okay? Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. She scanned for the reception desk but then thought better of it. Instinct guided her faster than reason. Each step made her heart pound harder, like a drum echoing in a hallway too quiet. The fluorescent lights reflected off her tense face, etching clearly the exhaustion from sleepless nights, filled with mismatched texts, unanswered calls, and Ethan's explanations that were too smoothly rehearsed. As she neared the maternity ward, she stopped. A pale blue plastic chair sat against the wall, draped with a black coat she could recognize even from afar. The stitched seam at the collar, the keychain tag clipped to the pocket, and the cedarwood scent she bought for him every fall. Beside it was a still warm coffee cup, steam faintly rising like a trace of someone who had just stepped away. Skylar placed a hand on her belly, trying to steady her breathing. She took a few more steps when a nurse pushed open the door to delivery room number 6, leaning out slightly to call the person outside back in. The nurse's voice was gentle but clear, slicing through the silence. The baby was coming soon. The father could return. In that instant, the air thickened. Skylar peered through the small glass pane on the closing door. Inside, the harsh white light made everything starkly cruel. Ethan stood by the bed, leaning toward a young woman with hastily tied blonde hair, her face contorted in contraction. Her hand clutched his tightly, and he allowed it, even bending down to whisper something in her ear, an intimate reassurance that had once belonged only to Skylar. Jenna Reeves. The name shattered in her memory, the new employee Ethan had mentioned offhand as a diligent assistant. Skylar had brushed off the faint unease every time he brought her up. Now, witnessing the scene before her, every puzzle piece she had ignored snapped together with brutal precision. A wave of dizziness swept over her. The hallway spun slightly. She stepped back, then another step, her hand groping for the cold wall behind to hold on. The labor groans from the room echoed out, blending with her racing heartbeat into a piercing noise only she could hear. She tried to swallow the pain, surging like waves crashing against rock. But her throat choked up. No tears fell. Only a frigid silence spread from her chest to her belly, making her shiver. She tried to walk away, but her feet felt glued to the tile. Each breath grew heavier, quicker, as if the air itself had turned its back on her. A sudden pain gripped her lower abdomen, forcing her to double over. Distant machine beeps, and the clack of nurses' heels on tile blended into a faraway hum. Skylar reached out, seeking support, but her fingertips met only empty air. She collapsed to her knees, her breath ragged. The ceiling lights shattered into swirling halos of light. In the hallucinatory noise, she heard someone calling toward her, the rush of running footsteps, then hands steadying her shoulders. But everything faded, swallowed into a thick fog. Before the darkness fully enveloped her, the last image lingering in her eyes was the delivery room door closing, and the familiar silhouette of Ethan turning his back to her, facing the other woman. Alright, my dear audience, if you're watching and finding this story interesting, please comment number 1, or comment I'm still here to keep listening, okay? Seattle's morning light filtered through the heavy curtains as Skylar opened her eyes. Not in the hospital, but in a spacious, quiet room, much warmer than the indifferent chill of last night's hallway. The faint scent of lavender hung in the air, a fragrance she recognized immediately, the penthouse apartment of her mother in Fairview Tower. A place elevated above the city's sounds, as if suspended in the gray-blue skies of the Pacific Northwest. She lay still for a long while, letting her breath sink with the subtle hum of the underfloor heater. Each heartbeat still carried the echo of the hospital night. The stark white lights, Ethan's hand on a body that wasn't hers, the cruel composure in his eyes when he saw her standing there. As Skylar tried to sit up, her belly felt heavy but stable. A soft knock sounded before her mother entered. Helen Monroe maintained her perpetual calm, straight posture, silver hair neatly pinned, the poised gait of a woman who had weathered too many battles, without needing to shout to prove it. She placed a glass of water on the table and sat in the chair beside, neither pressing nor questioning. Skylar sensed the familiar silence between them, a gentle language the mother and daughter still used in moments that demanded steady footing. After a few minutes, Helen rose and walked to the low table near the window. When she turned back, she carried a slim silver metal box. She set it before Skylar, then sat again, slowly crossing her arms. Inside the box was a stack of old files, the paper edges slightly darkened by time. Legal stamps, familiar signatures, and the Monroe Industries logo emerged under the dim light. Skylar looked up, searching her mother's gaze for explanation. Helen merely nodded slightly, as if inviting her to open it. Flipping to the first page, Skylar saw her own signature from when she had just turned 21, when she thought she had escaped the family business whirlwind. She had believed Ethan would be the anchor to build a simpler, more peaceful life for them both. But these papers told a different story. She was the absolute controlling shareholder, holding 76% of the shares. Not Ethan. Not the board of directors. A chill ran down her spine, but not from fear. It was the sensation of a door flung open by the wind, sudden, forceful, revealing a sky broader than she had ever seen. Helen touched the edge of the file stack lightly with one finger. That silent gesture said volumes. Power had never left Skylar. She had simply chosen not to look at it. As Skylar was still piecing it all together, David Walsh entered. He carried a large briefcase, his expression stern but not cold. For years, he was the one Helen trusted without explanation. David spread the documents across the table. Cold numbers, screenshot images of emails, hotel bills, marked suspicious transfers. Each page was a sharp incision. Ethan had used project funds to cover for Jenna apartment rent, premium gym memberships, business expenses that never existed. But David didn't stop there. He placed a series of decrypted, encoded emails on the table between Jenna Reeves and Silverbrook Capital. Not flirtations, not romantic secrets, but step-by-step instructions for Jenna. Approach Ethan. Exploit his weaknesses. Probe internal meetings. And most crucially, push Ethan to seize executive control when Skylar was too unstable due to pregnancy. End quote. End quote. Skylar stared at the words, her hand resting lightly on her belly. The child within her suddenly became the centerpiece of a cold conspiracy. It wasn't just a husband's betrayal. It was an assault on her inheritance. In the silence, Skylar closed her eyes. No tears. No sobs. Only a clarity sharp as a laser cut. She was no longer the woman pushed out of the hospital hallway. Dear audience, please pause for a moment to subscribe to the channel before watching the next part of the story. But only if you truly empathize with what I'm sharing here. And leave a comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is now. It's fascinating to see everyone from all over joining us. When she opened her eyes, her gaze had changed. Deep, sharp, and still as a lake before the storm. "Gather it all," she said softly. David nodded, as if he had been waiting for those words for years. Helen placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, not gripping, but enough to convey the weight of an entire legacy behind her. Skylar inhaled slowly, feeling like her lungs were finally full again. For the first time in months, she feared nothing waiting ahead. She only saw the path clearly and knew exactly how she would walk it. Leaving the gray cloud layers enveloping Helen Monroe's penthouse, Seattle sank into an afternoon bathed in neon lights reflecting off Elliott Bay's waters. A city in constant motion. But amid that flow, Ethan and Jenna lived in a stagnant illusion, a sweet bubble they believed no one could touch. In a waterfront rooftop restaurant, where large windows opened to rhythmic waves and glowing docks, Jenna Reeves sat with legs crossed like a figure stepped from a fashion magazine page. She wore a new leather jacket, glossy high boots, and eyes always tracking the crystal glasses reflecting city lights. The air around her carried the confidence of those who believed they were winning. Ethan sat across, twirling his whiskey glass while his gaze drifted with Jenna's every gesture. Here, under warm lights and soft music, he felt like he was living a different life. A life where he was the center, admired, needed, seen as the man capable of rising above the Monroe shadow. Jenna leaned in, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The lights cast a soft glow on her face, making her stand out among the weekend diners. She glanced around, lingering longer when catching eyes watching them. In each look, she found validation. She relished it. It made her feel she was in the right place, the position Silverbrook had promised. After dinner, they left the restaurant and walked down the brick path to the parking lot. A light drizzle fell, creating round ripples on the black pavement. Jenna linked arms with Ethan as they crossed the street, heading to a high-end boutique on Pine Avenue. The glass doors parted, warm light spilling out with the scent of luxury perfume. Inside, Jenna was like a child in a treasure trove. Her hand glided over rows of coats, satin dresses, exquisite accessories displayed on glass shelves. She had no qualms trying the priciest items, no hesitation letting store staff kneel to zip dresses or fetch more shoes. Ethan followed, hands in pockets, a posture half smug, half indulgent. Something flickered in his eyes in these moments, a sense of power, of being chosen, of his life heading to a better place. The staff lined up as Jenna emerged from the fitting room in a shimmering floor-length gown. She spun before the mirror, the hem brushing lightly against the floor. She regarded herself in the glass with a proud smile, the smile of someone who thought the world was unfolding before her. She chose 3 outfits, then a pair of shoes, then a lightweight fur coat. When the clerk asked if they should gift wrap, Jenna glanced at Ethan, as if awaiting his tacit approval. He nodded. The company card was presented. A few swipes, a few signatures, and an entire afternoon of luxury was buried in Monroe Industries' cash flow. At day's end, they stopped by Jenna's new apartment with harbor views, dark hardwood floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows. This place wasn't rented by Ethan, but he never asked why. He didn't want to spoil the soothing atmosphere Jenna brought him. An atmosphere he believed stemmed from people valuing him. Jenna unpacked the bags, item by item, arranging them on the sofa like trophies. She paused at the window, gazing at the city reflected in the dark glass. A message lit up her phone, a string of codes, symbols, and a short query from Silverbrook. They wanted a progress report. All right, my dear audience, if you're watching and finding this story interesting, please comment number 1, or comment, "I'm still here to keep listening." Okay? Jenna glanced at Ethan from across the room, seeing him pouring drinks for them both. His demeanor relaxed, as if he had never stood before a crumbling life waiting to happen. She screenshot a few papers he had left on the kitchen counter, an internal meeting schedule, a note on security process vulnerabilities, a personnel change draft. Each was sent off in seconds. As Ethan handed her the glass, Jenna smiled softly, leaning into his shoulder like a lover. But in the reflection from the window pane, That softness vanished. Only one thing remained: ambition cold as steel. She believed Skylar Monroe was withdrawing from the game. She believed Ethan would soon become the corporation's head. She believed everything Silverbrook promised was within reach. But Jenna didn't know. Skylar's silence wasn't retreat. It was the calm before a whirlwind. And when that whirlwind swept in, no one in this room would hold on to what they grasped. The afternoon drifted by. Seattle draped the sky in a thin veil of silver clouds, the lights softening as if the whole city held its breath after the storm. Skylar stood before the wide window, one hand on her belly, the other relaxed in the warm draft seeping through the glass. Across the bay, ferries cut trails of light, shimmering like new paths emerging on the still waters. She had endured a night that cracked her heart open, then awakened to truths she had chosen not to face squarely. But strangely, that pain didn't destroy her. Instead, it peeled away the fog that had shrouded her life for years. It showed her clearly who she was, where she stood, and how strong she was to rewrite her own story. Ethan and Jenna might think everything was still within their grasp. Silverbrook might believe the game was over. But none of them understood the most crucial thing. Skylar had never left the board. She had only watched in silence, waiting for the precise moment to play the decisive piece. And that moment was closer than they imagined. From now on, her journey wasn't just protecting the child in her womb or reclaiming trampled honor. It was reclaiming what was rightfully hers. Confronting the betrayal not with screams, but with clarity, with reason, and with the strength they had all underestimated. If you want to keep following how Skylar turns the tide of the battle, if you want to see part 2 where the truth finally shatters every layer of disguise, leave a comment below. What do you think will happen next? We want to hear your thoughts.